Okay. And actually, I can start with something a little different. If I could get rid of all this stuff over here. Oops. Well, that didn't work.
Go up to slideshow on the menu.
Yeah, I wanted to share my screen first.
You are.
Um, I don't see it myself. I just see me.
You're sharing the window, the
Yeah.
PowerPoint window.
Okay.
I hope you two
And
are not actually outside in the 110-degree heat.
no, we are not. I was trying to like it. Frank was talking about small scopes. I was just going to show one giant scope, but I don't see that it's going to work. So, okay. Do you see the yes, it says I'm sharing my slideshow. So,
Yeah. And
okay.
it's the PowerPoint editing. There you go.
There. Yes, right. Okay. This was a continuation of work we've done for quite some time, trying to make a Windows laptop an automatic video capture recorder. And this worked really well with Windows 10 computers. Do you want something? And and Windows 11 version, but uh, they only supported the video streams, not digital screens. I have a document that's out there on the occultations.org document center presenting a Windows 10 computer, and it's got some Windows 11 updates. However, uh, it's a lot more difficult now. Windows 11 has changed. First of all, its operating system has changed, and there's a lot of multiple versions now. And so it's very difficult to try to prepare one set of instructions for how to take care of a bunch of different types of Windows 11 computers, particularly when I don't own that many of them. So I decided to, and also if you've got a single laptop that you'd like to use for many things, because you could, since they are now quite large, I mean, they have large memories, you don't really want to leave them unattended. But so I decided to talk about how to prepare Windows 11 computers for data capture, but not for unattended operation, just unattended use, maybe in protected areas, and also in cases where you need occasional to frequent internet access. So I also found that looking through some of the Windows information about what's coming in the future, it really I'm not able to prepare detailed instructions on exactly how to prepare a modern Windows laptop for occultation recording, but I can do suggestions and note potential issues so that you can try to have a computer that's ready to work with many different software packages and digital cameras and be able to successfully record occultations. So a couple of caveats. After all, these are from my perspective and not endorsed by Microsoft. They're based on my own personal laptops, which actually are Windows 11 Home under version 23H2, which is known in Microsoft as Sun Valley 3. They have another version coming up, 24H2, called Hudson Valley. It's available on some enterprise laptops, and it will be available to the rest of us next year. And by available, I mean they force it on you. You don't always have an option. So my ideas about how to work with this is to capture data while offline, in other words, not on the internet, and data captured to your laptop, not to the cloud, so that you can see it when you're not online. You need the ability to connect to the internet when you need it for doing updates, getting more information, or whatever. But you need to eliminate or minimize requests for internet access when you're offline. And I always have only one account per computer as administrator, but that's not something that Microsoft encourages. The goals for this are to minimize the interruptions to your use of the computer, minimize or eliminate any distractions, prioritize your observing, and be able to adjust to changes, particularly operating system updates, and maintain currency with the operating system and the software, but also to be able to capture data without drops. And so I list a couple things that, first of all, things that are dangerous, things that will dangerous to an observing session, not dangerous to you. A dead battery, for example, or permission denial, so that you can't download something. Interruptions that can cause drop frames, like communications from external sources, or competing processes, especially competition for USB communications ports, and interruptions that can come from update requests and notifications, and things that are nuisances that divert your attention or screen block the notifications, such as suggestions about updates or things you might want to do from Microsoft OEMs and so forth, and something called widgets, which will be dancing around the bottom of your screen and causing you annoyances. Here is something that is in the danger category. In other words, lid controls. The default when you get a computer may be turn on upon opening, or is also known as flip to boot. If you'd like to set your computer to never turn off, this risks depleting your battery. If you slightly bump the lid while you're traveling, it'll turn on the computer, but you've got it set to never turn off. So you may not even notice it. This has happened to me. And the computer, when we arrived, was dead. The control of this feature is variable. Sometimes you have to get into the BIOS. Other times, it's available under power options. You may need to check with the manufacturer or look through details of the specifications in order to find out how to control it. If you want to allow processing while the lid is shut, in other words, you want to set your computer up to observe, but you want to extend the battery life as long as you can by having the lid shut. Under screen and sleep options, you set to never sleep and never turn off, and that you can find under system settings, power and battery, or control panel power options. There's another feature that can cause a lot of trouble. It's called core isolation. It's a switch controlling memory integrity, and it prevents some drivers from loading if they don't pass tests from Microsoft. And I have had that happen as well. You need to find device security in the start search window and look for core isolation details and turn off memory integrity. But do that only if you have experienced difficulties installing drivers, because it can protect you from bad or malevolent drivers. And here's an example of something that's more of a nuisance, just a random pop-up. Welcome to use Lenovo Smart Key. The problem is with this type of thing is that it floats on top of the middle of the screen. So you can't see what you're trying to look at. And it's sometimes can be a little hard to find the control to turn this off. As you see, this particular one didn't have any little switch to turn off. It had a next, so you can go on to see what else they're talking about. But if you're in the middle of observing and this shows up, and it doesn't need internet, by the way, it just some combination of keystroke made it show up, you lose the view of your program. And I can tell you it's highly annoying. Now, here are things that I do. I reduce or eliminate any storage requests to cloud, such as OneDrive. Again, this is something that's highly personal. A lot of people do like to store on OneDrive. So I move the OneDrive temporary directory to a more easily located spot. It's buried down under users, and change apps and programs that store to OneDrive to storing to a local directory. One program that will store to OneDrive is SharpCap. So I changed that I created a directory called SharpCap Captures and store there. I use a dark background and night mode so that this computer isn't too distracting when you're trying to observe it or set up at night. I only turn off the computer with a specific request. And as I said, I operate my computer as the admin. Microsoft prefers you be a user with a separate account for admin, but you still, even when you are with admin, you still will have examples of needs administrative privileges, and one would be SharpCap. You have to run it as SharpCap/admin to be able to update the PC clock from the camera GPS data, even if you are running as admin, which is, I don't understand, but that's the way it works. Also, I tried to control all the updates by stalling or suspending Windows updates, but it's not always possible to control updates from non-Microsoft sources. And in my case, I've got some hassles with the Hewlett-Packard printer service update that's constantly trying to do something which um, I had to get help from Microsoft to get it turned off once before, but it came right back again as soon as we got done. So I'm not quite sure what to do about that yet. And before observing, I turn on airplane mode to make sure I'm disconnected from the internet. And here's some more suggestions. One of them is to enlarge the size of the pointer and have it turn white. I hope you can see this on the screen there when it's over dark image areas. Show the seconds in the system tray clock. I can't demonstrate that right now because it's not showing here, and I disable or deny Microsoft monitoring of my computer use to not permit user experience transmission so that I'm not bothered with those kinds of requests. I don't allow something called dynamic lock, which I found caused some difficulty, and I turned off nearby sharing to reduce the amount of transmission. All of these can be accessed under the settings icon. And here I wanted to talk about an example problem. I think this is mentioned earlier by David, or was it? I forget exactly who mentioned it. The problem with one of our Arecibo stations. This was a Seagate optical telescope array, a tube, on an iOptron AZMP go-to mount with a Wi-Fi connection to the laptop. We were using a Zuo ASI 178 camera, a GPS-based flash timer, one of Art Olson's, a Windows 11 laptop, and an iOptron commander communicating with the mount, with SharpCap controlling the camera and capturing the data. We noticed no problems during observing. No issues were noted. We successfully recorded. We used an exposure of 150 milliseconds. But PIOT, when it was processing the data, reported issues with the data timing, complained about possible missing data, and noted that the data rate was 374 milliseconds. In other words, there were 224 dead milliseconds between each observation, which was a bit upsetting. So here's the telescope in particular. This is a old C8, now deforked and put on an AZMP, and I must say this works quite well, a lot better than we had expected. The red cable connects to a laptop, which isn't showing here, and here's the cable connecting to the flash timer. We've used this setup frequently for occultation observations, and we actually have two like this. And we're very happy with them. But we think the problem was that the Wi-Fi mount to the laptop communication or the iOptron commander or both of them are what slowed the data rate. We have not located what controls the data rate, but we do know that the camera, this Zuo camera, records nominally if we use it on a Celestron mount controlled by CPWI, in other words, USB linked, no longer using Wi-Fi link. And there are two places where this shows up. One is in the SharpCap camera settings. We hadn't noticed this before. You have the exposure. Oh, please. The exposure was 150 milliseconds, but the actual frame rate is, in effect, 374 milliseconds, or 2.67545 frames per second. And PIO will also tell you that the time delta, in other words, time between each observation, is 374 milliseconds. So the solution, of course, is not to use Wi-Fi connection with the iOptron commander. And this particular problem is not one that shows up that you can actually prevent. You just have to watch your data and analyze your data and see whether or not it's as you expected. So there is no real impact of this particular instance of the problem because IOTA analysis reports time based on the data, not on what I thought it was. So it's no impact to others that using this data would find a problem. But to prevent this sort of thing in the future applications, that compare the actual frame sequence with the exposure from the SharpCap recording settings. And when this is a serious issue, would be if they're dropped frames, so that if there be, whoop, sorry, something showed up and I tried to get rid of it. If there were dropped frames, since the tie tagging depends on a consistent data rate in IOTA, if you have to use the time tagger. But so the major impact of this particular thing was that the observer looked pretty stupid. So this is actually the IOTA plot. You can't see it, but the two observations are down here at the bottom. This was very, very clearly an event. So there was no issue about that. It's just that the time is it's not nearly as nice as it would have been had we recognized that this was an issue. Whoops. Sorry. I am working on a table of options that are found in the Windows operating system under settings, and note which ones might impact an observing session, provide suggestions on what should be set. I'm going to post that table on occultations.org and expect that these options will change, relocate, or become even more complex in the new updated version of the operating system, but the names should stay pretty much the same or similar. And you can always find a switch with a search through the setups if you know the name, but I have found that if you don't know the name, you just sort of have a general idea of what you're looking for, you will be led down a rabbit hole of trying to find things through Google and Microsoft and so forth. Are there any questions? Let's see if I think I'll get off the share screen.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I ran into a similar issue with frame rate versus exposure time when I was doing my testing for the Didymos event.
Yeah.
After talking to John Moore, the answer in my case was the USB traffic setting in SharpCap. I had to set I had that setting called USB traffic. I had to set that lower, and that resolved the problem completely. Then all of a sudden it was recording at the actual frame rate. So you might, when you're doing your testing to see if you can recreate the problem, you might experiment with that, see if that solves your problem with the ASI camera as well. I was using a QHY, but I think it doesn't matter, I think. Apparently SharpCap determines, it makes some judgment based on what frame rate it thinks it can support, and it limits the frame rate. So even if you set exposure setting to a certain level, it may not record at that level if it thinks it can't handle it. And apparently USB traffic is one thing that does affect that.
Yeah, I see somebody suggested using a lower or ROI. I'm not sure that would really help, but because
it does.
I did use a lower ROI as well, but it turns out I also had the USB traffic in my case.
Yeah, okay, well, I had played around with the ROI on another circumstance, and it didn't. I think the USB traffic is a lot more powerful in handling that.
Consider binning as well. Binning 2 or binning 3.
Yeah, ROI is important because that actually determines your data bandwidth. So that certainly has to be in the right ballpark first as well. But so both those are good suggestions to experiment with.
I have a comment. There is an option in the settings for power management in Windows that's called what should I do when I close the lid? And it does have a setting of do nothing.
Yeah.
So that is an important one to set, so that if you want to just save battery power, closing the lid theoretically does nothing. I have noticed, however, that sometimes if you close the lid and open it a couple of times for checking on things, IOTA video capture will stop working and you'll have to restart it. There's
Huh.
some interaction between closing the lid, doing nothing, but it actually is doing something that IOTA video capture senses and gets very confused. So if that happens to you and you see the screen freeze, you just have to stop it and restart the program.
Ted, do you have to restart it completely, or can you just tap on the window? I noticed that if my computer goes to sleep, um, you know, waiting for an event to happen, it the screen goes to a screensaver or something, and then when I tap on the keyboard or something, IOTA video capture is frozen. But if I do something to, you know, update the window, just tap the window or something like that, it starts running again. I don't have to relaunch the program.
Yeah, that's a little different than what I was talking about. I
Okay,
had the computer set to never sleep. So
I see.
when I close the window, close the lid, the only thing that's supposed to happen is that the screen goes off. And when you open the
Ah,
lid, the screen comes back on. Everything else should be running in the background because if it does go to sleep, it may, and it's unattended, it won't record.
right.
I see a couple of things I want to comment to that are in the comment lines about one was about USB 2 versus USB 3 ports. Um, most of my laptops have multiple USB 3 ports, and I use them in preference to USB 2. And I was using them on this example that we showed with the problem, the rate. So that wasn't part of it. Um, Frames per second, sometimes it does not show up. And somebody suggested using Linux or Raspberry Pi, not for SharpCap, because SharpCap and almost all the software I use is actually Microsoft dependent, only runs on Windows machines.
As is IOTA video capture.
Right, yeah. So Raspberry Pi is probably a good one, but we'd have to rewrite all the software. So I'm not capable of doing that. So sorry. And Ted suggested something about uh, showing what's in that building behind my head, which is an observatory. And let's see if I can do that. It's, oh, come on, go away. Um, well, it's not letting me do that. Oh, maybe this will. Here we are. That small C14, which Ted helped us immensely in getting set up. Really immensely. We
So
are so grateful for that. We've now got it. I had some pictures, but they didn't turn out this nice, so I didn't show them yet. We've now got it with a hyperstar and another plate here so we can attach another telescope. So it is it's a lot of fun to use. And we are now trying to work with Ted's able assistance, I'm sure, to try to get this to the point where we can actually control it from inside the house and inside the observatory, so we can have the luxury on a nice cold, well, it doesn't really get cold here in Arizona, but colder winter night of, of working with the telescope from inside a nice warm house. But for now, we're happy enough to go out and this white lump in the corner here, that's a air conditioner, which is very much needed in Arizona. It's over 100 and I think it's 110 right now. There. It's warm. That's Fahrenheit, by the way, not centigrade. Yes. Okay, I will stop sharing.
thank you, Joan.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the new edition. That's really exciting. And there's Christo. Great.